In the early 1930s, the Nazis, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler, gained power in Germany through systematic propaganda and promises of national revival and glory that seemed to convince the German people, then turned the country into a totalitarian regime based on racial purity and extreme nationalism. They launched extensive and pervasive propaganda into all aspects of life, controlling the media, education, and all means of mass communication in Germany to spread the ideology of hatred against groups deemed incompatible or threatening to Nazi ideology, such as Jews, homosexuals, political prisoners, communists, Romani, and any individuals or groups who dared to oppose their movements. Having succeeded in building a strong Schutzstaffel paramilitary organization, they soon took control of various institutions of society, infiltrated their ideological influence into various public institutions, and soon established concentration camps as places to confine, torture, and exterminate enemies of the state, making the camps a symbol of terror and cruelty that became the basis of the Holocaust. In support of their efforts to fully control society, the Nazis also established youth organizations, such as the German Girls' League, which aimed to indoctrinate teenage girls into embracing racial hatred and instilling blind loyalty to the state. It was from these organizations that they recruited young women to work as camp guards, and they were taught to be brutal, keeping order in a cruel and merciless manner. One woman known for her cruelty as a concentration camp guard was Irma Grese. Born in 1923 in a small village in northeastern Germany, Irma Grese was initially known as a quiet and shy child, often avoiding conflicts rather than engaging in them. However, as she entered adolescence, her life changed drastically, especially after she dropped out of school at the age of 14 and began moonlighting at several places until eventually joining the local hospital where she trained as a nurse. Although Grese was not initially directly involved with the Nazi Party, she gradually began to interact with the Schutzstaffel-affiliated neighborhoods. At the age of 19, Grese officially joined as a camp guard at Ravensbrück in 1942, and along with the training she received from the SS, she was increasingly influenced by the Nazi ideology of demeaning other human beings, especially the Jews, which she used as justification to commit atrocities against the prisoners under her control. After completing her training, Grese was assigned to the Ravensbrück camp, the first place where she absorbed the methods of oppression against female prisoners. Ravensbrück camp was quite different from other camps, as it was run almost entirely by Aufseherinnen or female camp guards. Disease and malnutrition were rampant in the camp, and to meet the ever-increasing demands of the war, prisoners were forced to work harder in difficult conditions under threat of death. The following year, Grese was transferred to Auschwitz, one of the largest extermination camps in history, where she was soon promoted to senior SS supervisor, the second highest position for female guards in the camp, where she was responsible for approximately 30,000 Jewish female prisoners. At Auschwitz, Grese became notorious for her cruelty. She used a whip and often beat weak prisoners to death, carried a pistol with which she shot prisoners indiscriminately, and set attack dogs on helpless prisoners. Grese was also known to have close contacts with camp commanders, such as Joseph Kramer and Maria Mandel, as well as with some of the prisoners who were allegedly the objects of her physical and sexual torture. In 1944, Grese was promoted to Rapportführerin or rapporteur, a position of high authority for a female warden, which gave her the power to select prisoners deemed unfit for forced labor and send them to the gas chambers for execution. In this position, Grese demonstrated her cruelty by selecting prisoners who were weak or sick, for no apparent reason other than her own will, and many prisoners who, in order to avoid death at Grese's hands, went to great lengths to disguise their poor health in the hope of surviving a little longer. The most gruesome part of everything Grese ever did was having lampshades made from the skin of 3 dead prisoners. With such great authority, Grese carried out her threats and sadistic actions without a hint of mercy, that the prisoners dubbed her the Hyena of Auschwitz. In early 1945, as Allied forces began to approach, Grese took part in the evacuation of prisoners from Auschwitz to Ravensbrück, until finally in March of the same year she was transferred to the Bergen-Belsen camp, along with a large number of prisoners from Ravensbrück. When the Allies arrived at Bergen-Belsen to liberate the camp, They witnessed horrific conditions that cannot be described in words. The prisoners were starving, neglected, and many were on the verge of death. Not long after, in April 1945, Irma Grese was captured by the British Army. She was then brought to trial for the atrocities she had committed. In September 1945, she was tried at the Bergen-Belsen court in Lüneburg, along with 44 other defendants, on charges of extreme cruelty that had caused the suffering and death of thousands of people. During the trial, Grese was charged with being responsible for the deaths of at least 30 people every day during her time at the camp, as well as other heinous acts such as whipping prisoners' faces to leave deep scars and mobilizing hungry dogs to attack helpless people in the camp. Despite all the evidence against her, Grese never showed any genuine remorse during the trial, denying the severity of the charges against her. In the end, after a trial full of harrowing testimonies from survivors, Irma Grese was found guilty of war crimes and unforgivable atrocities, and she was sentenced to hang on December 13, 1945, when she was just 22 years old. It is said the night before her execution, she sang Nazi songs with fellow inmate Johanna Bormann.